Did Bob freeze? Bob, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, Chair, we're live.
Whenever we're ready, I'll go.
We're good.
Thank you. Order. Before we get too far into this, if anybody wants to participate, ask a question, etc., please raise your hand. I'll note that and get to you at some point in time, okay? Okay, are there any declarations of interest by the members?
No.
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 No. Hearing none. Okay. The minutes of our last meeting. Are there any errors and or omissions? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
It's Barry Guttridge. I so move.
Seconder from Alan.
Yes.
Alan, you have a question?
No, I was just seconding.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Aye.
Thank you. The first report we have today is file number A02-20 and B03-20, an application for a minor variance and an application for severance at 171 Street. I will now ask the planner, Rob Franklin, if you would please give us your explanation of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the property in question lies on the west side of Bagot Street, just south of Albert Street, north of Sydenham, just from a location perspective. It is in the West District, Heritage District. The applicants, Jim and Cindy Henderson, have applied for a severance and minor variance. The lot is slightly undersized. The property is zoned residential 3, which typically requires a set frontage of 11 meters, which the property in question for the proposed severance does not meet, which is why there's a concurrent minor variance application at the same time. I'm in my report right now on page, sorry, let me just scroll up here, page 7 of 70 in the overall agenda package.
Sorry, Rob, can I just interrupt here? It seems that one of our members is flagging in that he's not able to hear.
Peter's muted.
Peter,
I can't hear you, Peter.
Peter is muted at the moment.
he has to unmute himself, Bob. I don't know if he knows. Might be having some audio issues. Let me see if I can reach him. Just a second.
Adrian, I would just say if we have quorum, we should continue and we'll sort out Peter as we can go here.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead then.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Just making sure I was unmuted myself before I started again. So the current property is a fairly large parcel. It has approximately 89.5 feet of frontage, is about little over 3,000 square feet in lot area, as shown on Schedule A of the overall report, which is on, just scope down to it here. Page 16 of 70 in the overall report is Schedule A for this first application to give context. There is a survey attached. Unfortunately, it's sideways, so you got to twist your head a little bit on Schedule B, which is a survey of the lot showing the proposed infill lot to give overall dimensions for the parcel in question. Scroll back up again. From a context perspective, typically the review goes through a number of steps looking at the official plan, the zoning bylaw, the county official plan, places to grow, Planning Act, and in this case also the Heritage Act, to see where and how an application would fit in. That goes into in large detail in section 5 of the report, which is the analysis. I don't want to go through it in great detail. Hopefully members of the public who've been interested in this application and received a copy of the agenda, which is posted online, have had a chance to glance through it, or the committee members to go through it. One of the specific policies is in the official plan, and particularly the provincial policy statements, is conserving significant built heritage resources. So this is the protection of those overall heritage resources, whether it be in scope of a new application, whether it be in something new that was going to be built next door to it. Obviously, demolishing a heritage resource is not conserving it. So there's different methods of how one might conserve it. Given those overall concerns, as part of this application, prior to it being considered complete, a heritage impact assessment by Branch Architecture was submitted as part of the application, rather than as a condition, as we've seen sometimes in the past, depending on the scope of the work. This was seen as needed up front to ensure that a lot would be acceptable in this area. And that report was attached as an appendix to my overall staff report so that committee members would have access to that additional information. In the Town of Cobourg official plan, it discusses infill severances in residential areas, having to go through a number of tests to see how the scale of development for the height and massing, streetscape, backyard or rear yard areas all fits within the overall neighborhood and with those adjacent lots. At this point, prior to the writing of my report, there was not any formal concept to design for how a lot might fit. So staff then investigated other lots in the neighborhood to try to see how that might fit in terms of lot sizes, other kinds of heritage homes, to see if it would meet the test of the official plan. That's gone through into a little bit of detail in the staff report on page 11. Page 11 of 70, again, within the overall agenda. As noted, the zoning bylaw for an R3 district requires an 11-meter front yard. Typically 35 feet is that minimum. In this case, to protect the existing heritage house, there is a requirement, because it's 2 stories, of at least a 5.5 foot, 1.6 meter setback on the north side of that house. In this case, the proposed lot meets those setback requirements, but it does leave a smaller area left for that lot. In this case, it's 9.88 meters. So a little over, just under 4 feet less. So about 32 feet. The lot area meets the minimum target. So again, the only variance in question as part of this severance for the concurrent variance would be that slightly smaller frontage. Lot area is met. When, as a planner, I went through and looked at the overall area, I looked at about a 2-block radius from this area to try to see what other kinds of lots are in this. Is it a congruent neighborhood where all the lots are 50 feet or 65 feet, for example? And there's some areas of town where that is specifically the case. where they're all the original caddy plan lots that are 65, 66 feet wide. Other neighborhoods are mixed. And when I looked at that as part of this overall application, which is shown in Schedule D, which is a lot area plan. It's not completely up to date, that lot area plan, but gave the best context for the overall lot widths. It does not take into account the townhouse cottages on the south side of Albert Street. It still shows those as 3 individual lots. This particular plan was done several years ago by the Ministry of Finance at the time, which gives all the old roll numbers for those lots. But what I find is a very useful tool is it gives the lot dimensions rather than just our typical town GIS map, which just shows the little tan boxes, if you will, on the air photo plan showing the overall lots. So when one starts investigating that map around to look at how those lots fit in some cases, the smaller lots are semi-detached lots. I do recognize that, but there are several homes in this neighborhood that are smaller. Excuse me, narrower frontage.
No problem.
So looking at the heritage impact analysis, looking at that analysis of the overall neighborhood and lot frontages, I did not, in my opinion, find that this was out of context for this neighborhood. Sorry, as I'm just scrolling through my report to kind of hit the highlights for committee members. There were a number of comments, questions, if you will, from the Coburg Heritage Committee, which are attached also to this report, that I've tried to encapsulate in the recommended conditions, which would be that a severance agreement come into place that would show the kind of higher level of detail, typically not required at approval of a severance, of what an infill lot might work like. Many infill lots, as the committee may recall in the past, is required. Again, staff have recommended a severance agreement be put in place, whether it be to protect trees, to show parking, to show how a heritage, a new house may fit into that heritage district. Also a requirement from our Public Works Department asking about individual services being brought into a new infill lot, and a grading plan, again, to ensure that things like drainage from this new house, should it be recommended by the committee, excuse me, approved by the committee, not just recommended, that things like drainage and runoff would be adequately dealt with on its own lot and not cause impacts to the north, south, or west to adjacent residential lots. Also, things like the 5% value of land be paid as a cash in lieu of parkland, which is a standard condition for new severance lots. And I'm just seeing if I missed anything else, committee, if you can just bear with me for a moment. I believe that's all the information I wanted to present initially, and then deal with questions. There's also additional information from the applicants and their heritage designer. Typically, before you get into questions of myself, looking at the agenda would be then an opportunity for them to present some information, and then to get into questions from the committee, whether it be to myself as part of this report, or to Lindsay, or the Lindsay Reed, who's from Branch Architecture, the author of the Heritage Impact Analysis, to provide some additional information as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rob. that the applicant join us.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay.
Yes,
So-
you're great.
I'm just going to do a share screen because we've just done a few slides to share with everyone to make sure they understand everything properly. Oh, shoot.
Should be middle of the bottom there, Lindsay.
It is. Sorry. Just.
The joys of Zoom meetings.
Here we go. Thank you for your patience. Oh, is that okay?
It's great. Thank you.
Beautiful. So thank you for your patience. My name is Lindsay Reed. I'm a registered architect and heritage professional. I've worked for 20 years exclusively with heritage properties, doing building restoration and heritage planning, including lots of work with heritage districts. So if there are questions that come up from anyone, I'm happy to answer them with that regard. So the application we're here for today is the Hendersons own the lot here, and what they would like to do is sever it such that the building that they're restoring at the southern parcel can be sold and they can build a retirement home on the northern parcel. As Rob has said, the only variance that we're asking for right now is reduced frontage on the northern parcel. As far as we understand, all the other requirements are satisfied. I wanted to just provide a zoom in of the location map. As Rob mentioned, it's located within the West HCD. And as part of this, I was brought in to do a heritage conservation strategy to ensure that any change here would not have a negative impact on the cultural heritage value of the district and the property. So we developed a strategy that allows for the restoration of the house on the southern parcel right now. And we were working through our understanding of the neighborhood to provide a new lot that was compatible with the varied lot patterns within the Heritage District, and then be able to provide an opportunity for a new single-family home within an established neighborhood in downtown Coburg. So we did several things that I'll just walk through quickly to make sure that we understand that this was actually a good candidate for this change. This is just a snapshot of the streetscape for everyone's information. So on the west side, there are 3 properties with 3 dwellings. And then on the east side of the street, there are 8 properties with 8 dwellings. So even within this streetscape, there's a variety in terms of what the treatment is. So as Rob was mentioning, this plan of subdivision was developed in 1850. It went through its first surge of growth in the 1870s and then had another kind of building boom in the early 20th century. So this is why within this neighborhood especially, there's a wide variety of the lot sizes, and it is something that's actually identified within the Statement of Significance in the Heritage District Plan. When we were looking at this and doing our tests, like similar to what Rob did, we actually went around with the maps and looked for to understand what lots within the district were less than the 11-meter requirement. So just within this little map that we have shown here, anyone that's shown in green was found to be less than that. So just for visual references, we have some streetscapes on Albert Street that show 2 properties there with 33-foot frontages. Along Bagot Street, which is directly across the street, they range from about 3.5 to 35, where those kind of new 20th century infills are. And then there's a couple other examples on adjacent streets. When we met with staff, we had rough sketches as well to actually understand the buildability of the lot. You know, as an architect, I don't want to create a situation where we're creating really odd shaped lots that don't have the capacity to have a contributing house on them. So the little map that we've shown here just off to the left, it shows the property, and it shows the setbacks for a one-story building. So that front yard setback is based on the established building line of the adjacent properties, and then it shows the side and rear setbacks. The other thing I wanted to make sure everyone understood, that moving forward, any new infill construction within a heritage district does need to have a heritage permit, which requires a review by staff and the heritage committee and final approval by council. So this is, whatever happens on this property will go through another public process to make sure it complies. So I hope everyone will understand this, but given the times that we're living in right now, it has been very difficult for us to reach out and do kind of public consultation with this. We have gone to the Heritage Committee, and Rob provided the comments. And then last Friday, the owners met with 11 individuals that live in the neighborhood. What we did hear from people's primary concern is they were concerned about what a new house could look like here. So we've whipped together something for everyone to kind of understand the dream home for the applicant. So on the right side, the applicant has prepared a photo montage that shows, you know, a new house that's inspired by the Ontario cottage. It respects the side yard setbacks. It would, at this point in time, this early idea would require kind of parking in the front yard. And then off to the left, we have a little site plan that shows how that would work. So again, we're just starting to look at the buildability of the lot. And also to make sure that we're fulfilling the objective of the HCD bylaw. One of the key objectives they have there is to accommodate new development where it respects and complements the low profile 1- and 2-story and heritage character of the existing buildings, and does not affect the cultural heritage character of the district. So I think something like this coming forward would comply with that. And you know, I live in a small town, and this is exactly the type of infill and development that I like to see happening. And I'm happy to answer any questions that come up. I did want to just invite the owners to say a couple words so that you kind of understand their perspective. I have provided a slide that shows houses that they've restored over the years in the area, just so that you can understand their background and what they're trying to.
Well, hi, I'm at a Zoom meeting. I'll pass you over to Suzanne.
All right.
Okay. Are we on now? Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. Well, committee and neighbors, first of all, thank you for your time and consideration of our application. We want to assure you that we don't take this lightly. Living in Cobourg for 30 years now, we are and have always been lovers of heritage, as our past homes and projects demonstrate. You can see some of the pictures that Lindsay had up. This is to help our family, and we hope to build a quality and complementary home like the one in the example shown by Lindsay, abiding by all the heritage and council guidelines, so it looks like it's always been there, and so we can grow old in our retirement years. We've learned a lot through all of this and feel our experience now can all come together to build a small but fine home that will blend in with the community and support all the recommended guidelines of the Heritage District and to gracefully fit into this historic street. We're happy to answer any and all questions at this time. So thank you on behalf of myself and my wife.
Thank you.
Okay, committee members, questions of the planner? Peter. Alan, Peter, I believe you're still muted. You need to unmute yourself. Alan, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of things I'd like to clear up for myself and hopefully for others. With this new lot and the reduced frontage, sorry? Everybody hear me?
Hang on, Alan. Peter, you're now unmuted, and then you're muted again. So whatever you did work. There you go.
I'm gonna unmute myself. I'm gonna mute myself. There you go.
There you go. Okay. It's up. It's Alan speaking now, so take it from there.
Okay, I'll continue. Looking at this proposed lot and just doing some simple math, I'm going to assume that there's going to be a meter side yard setback on each side of the house. I'm going to assume that whoever is going to build this house is going to want as much bang for their buck as they can get. In other words, as much lot coverage as they can get, because when you factor in the cost of a new lot in that area of town, the cost of new construction, you obviously are not going to put up just a tiny little cottage. You're going to maximize your investment and subsequently max out the coverage as well. So pursuing that thought pattern with the minimum setbacks on each side, the setback at the front, I'm looking at a house that might be 25 feet wide, perhaps maxed out. I'm assuming that you're going to want a driveway, which is going to be another 8 or 10 feet stuck in the front of that. And once you've gotten to that stage, I'm really at a loss to understand how you can maintain heritage, character, and integrity and symmetry in that neighborhood when all you've got is just a sliver of a house showing beyond the driveway with a car sitting in it. I just don't see the meshing in the neighborhood of something like that. I could be way off base, but you know, common sense would dictate that an investment of this kind, a new build, cost of the land, you're going to max it out. And I'd be very surprised if whoever purchases the property wouldn't do that. So I'm really struggling with what the end result here is going to be, and struggling with the fact that thinking along those lines, I don't see how that fits into the neighborhood. I don't see how you maintain that historical character and integrity that everybody is trying to achieve. So that's my initial thought. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. For the answer to that, Lindsay, would you like to answer that? You're currently muted, so if you could please unmute yourself and answer that question. Thank you. There you go.
So I just wanted to go back to this slide that we showed. So what we have shown on this slide is actually allows for a 2-story house. It allows for the 1.6 meter setbacks on either side. And, you know, it needs to be worked out, but for right now, it's showing the required 2 parking spots on the front yard. I wanted to clarify that the owners who are applying for the severance right now are the ones that intend to build a house. So they are severing this lot so they can build themselves a retirement home here. They don't want to build a big house. They want, what we've shown here is what they want. So it's about 20 by 40 with a small rear wing on it. Okay?
Okay.
Like I said, we prepared this over the weekend in response to comments that we're getting back. We are brainstorming mitigation ideas. So for instance, you know, front yard parking, I'll be honest, is not my favorite thing. So things that we were looking at, what kind of ways can we look at treating a driveway that's going to be a little more sympathetic? And we did go around the neighborhood and look at other examples of front yard parking that exist. So this is a new one that I've seen on Sydenham, where they've actually kind of figured out how to do a sideways kind of parking spot, and they started to do plantings across it. Further along and centered in Sydenham is, there's a front house with a garage, and they have, a similar kind of paving treatment that grass can go through. And just for context, on the right, I've shown what the existing condition is across the street with all of those early 20th century front gable houses. All of those have front yard parking, and that's a non-kind of permeable surface that's there. Do you have any other questions about what's intended?
No, I'm good at the moment. I'll just let the process flow and come back later if I do.
Thank
Peter,
you, sir.
you have a question.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Am I unmuted and everything, I hope?
You are.
I'm referring to this document by the town of Coburg. It's the town of Coburg Urban and Landscape Design Guidelines. And when I look at it under the Heritage section, it talks about the West District, George Street District, East District containing considerable amount of character and so forth. One thing it refers to here is earlier heritage homes are characterized by varied garage treatments, i.e. the garage is not dominant. And when I look at a heritage street such as Church Street and as College Street, and even at Bagot Street, there are no garages out front. We can pick out where in the past, maybe we haven't been as vigilant as we should be as a town, we've allowed garages out front. But by and large, in these heritage districts, and again, I refer to Church Street, I refer to College Street, and even Bagot Street, I know it well, there are no garages out front, and it's not the dominant feature. My other concern is sort of piggybacking on what Alan has said. When I look at the width of this piece of property, it really, to put a house that maybe be 26 feet wide, 25 feet high, wide, I'm saying to myself, I can't see how that could be done and contain and maintain the heritage feature that's on that street, from the bottom of the street up until almost to the top. So I'm really concerned about that if we're really concerned about heritage, that this, I just don't see how this can go forward under these conditions. Chair, that's my comments.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to address something?
Astrid would.
Lindsay?
May I go ahead? Mr. Chair, you okay with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I looked at the neighborhood as a whole, but I also looked at this block, and I think this block is unique within the whole neighborhood. And basically, when I look across the street or elsewhere, I wonder what happened before, because some of it is quite unsuitable or not fitting. And I really think that this block is so unique the way it is. And in Coburg, we haven't really done the best job of preserving heritage, and I would really oppose this variance. It's a comment, not a question, but that's what I wanted to express.
Okay. All right. Do you have any other questions or responses? Cindy?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if Lindsay wanted to answer for me. I just was wanting to let you guys know we are lovers of heritage. What we said in our letter, we have lived in heritage homes We would never deface the street. We are actually really, truly wanting to build a small little home. We do not want to build and maximize the lot. I've lived in monster homes. At this stage of our life, I want to build an architectural gem that will fit in the streetscape and not deface. Like, that is what we would like to do, and more than happy to show everyone the plans, of course, and go through the committee of all that. But I want you to know that we're not maximizing the lot at all. We are actually wanting to build a 20-foot wide home. So if Lindsay wants to speak after that.
Sure. I just did want to clarify, because one of the committee members noted a garage facing on the street. That is not composing part of the application right now. That was a reference on another street. And with respect to the size of the house, I mean, we live in a world now where people build 3,000 square foot houses without even blinking. But the reference that the Hendersons are using, the original Ontario style cottages were, 20 by 30 feet. They weren't large buildings. They were lovely homes for people to live in. But, I'm very happy that the Hendersons are going back to a kind of a simpler model, especially within the Heritage District.
Okay, thank you.
And we have also, in all our years of Heritage Homes, have never had an owned garage, so that doesn't matter to us.
Okay, thank you. Alan, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do. I'd like to refer to the Heritage Impact Assessment Report. That's a report that was done, I'm assuming, to support the applicants. It doesn't have any, it's not a town document or supportive of municipal policy or anything of that nature, is it?
If I may respond, the Heritage Impact Assessment has to be done by a heritage professional. The intent of the Heritage Impact Assessment is to assess whether or not a change is going to have a negative impact or whether or not it's going to enhance and allow for good change. As a heritage professional, I have standards I have to work to and codes of ethics. So if I don't reach a stage in a project that I fully support a project and that abides by all the regulations I have to follow, I don't proceed with it. So this document takes into account all of the town's heritage planning, the Ontario Heritage Act, the PPS, as well as best practice.
If I may then, I'd just like to refer to a portion of the document. It's section 7.1 headed as new freestanding construction. And I'll just briefly read from it, because this really is causing me confusion, because it doesn't give me a clear picture of which way this situation should evolve. Anyway,
sorry, Alan, can you just confirm what page you're on of the agenda?
45.
Sorry, Alan, what was that page?
Page 45.
Page 45, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, as I said, it's headed as new freestanding construction. It goes on to say new construction is required to be compatible with the heritage character and attributes of adjacent heritage properties and the cultural heritage value of the district. That means adhering to the character of the surrounding neighborhood. New construction shall be a product of its own time and not pretend to be historic by incorporating historic detail that is inappropriate in contemporary construction. New design may be a contemporary interpretation of historic forms and styles, but replicas of historic buildings are discouraged. So what's the final product? What's the intent, given this sort of direction that this is to be a one-off, it's not to be a historical replica? And then how do you manage to create a building symmetrical to the neighborhood that fits in, that looks like it belongs, that it's always been there, that it's not a sore thumb sticking out opposed to its neighbors? So again, I struggle with this.
So,
Rob,
thank you, Mr. Chair. So in that instance, the heritage guidelines specifically look for compatibility, not that it's supposed to be a seamless fit in or to morph right into a specific neighborhood. Although it's proposed to be an Ontario cottage in terms of footprint, so are many of the homes over at New Amherst that are an Ontario cottage with modern products that are heritage-esque, if I can use that terminology and not offend my heritage colleagues, to look at how those homes look and adapt to that time frame. But there's no question when you drive through New Amherst that those are modern homes. This proposal would then go back to the Heritage Committee, and they would debate whether or not Section 7.1 is being met with a future application compared to a concept drawing, which has been very useful in terms of the last 2 days since it only just came out on Monday for staff to have a quick glance at to try to help understand how any home might fit in. In this case, the Hendersons have come forward and said this is a concept that they actually like, which is wonderful to hear, an Ontario cottage type home, because exactly based on to your original comment about a maximum home, that's the minimum setbacks, that's the maximum coverage, I think exactly would look terrible in this instance. Of course, that new home, because it needs a heritage permit approval, has other tests that it would need to go through that at this point, when we're looking at just the lot severance, we don't have that information. That is for a future decision from recommendation from the Heritage Committee and then approval by council should a severance be approved there. And that's where that compatibility and conformability for the new home actual construction. All we can look at now is what the lot, how the lot will fit in, and based on the tests of looking at that adjacent neighborhood, not only just this one block, and we don't have large scale, I would call them estate or mansion type houses on that west side that require an extra large setback, say as the homes might on Church Street or on Queen Street, where there are many examples of very large homes with very large setbacks or large side porches with an extensive grounds beside them. That's not the case here on Bagot Street, and that's why both the Heritage Impact Assessment and my assessment analysis as part of this report recommend, with conditions, an approval in this instance that an infill lot could be compatible.
All right, thank you, Rob.
The home itself will need to go through future tests to see that the proposed home is compatible and that parking is compatible. Just to go back to Peter's comment about a garage. I mean, that will definitely be part of that future understanding and discussion, separate from the lot question which we're faced with today.
okay, thank you. I would just like to remind the committee, we are not the Heritage Committee. We are just assessing this as the Committee of Adjustment. Barry, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that point. I think we're getting too much into building design. We should be looking at the question of whether the lot itself is suitable, given its size and so on, to support a home that would be comparable to those in the area. As you just indicated, all the design issues will get dealt with as part of the heritage permitting process and so on. And I think the report makes both reports, both the staff report and the heritage report, make it quite clear that the lot sizes in the area are consistently inconsistent. There are various sizes and so on in the area. So the question is this a sensible lot given the size of lots, the frontage of lots and that in the area? And I think that's the question that's really before us.
Mr. Delante.
Chair, just following up
Peter,
on
you have a question?
Yes, I do. Am I
Okay.
not? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, just following up on Barry's comments, I think as a committee of adjustment, part of the areas we're looking at, of course, is to assess whether the lot size, severance, or whatever we're having to dealing with fits. But we're also dealing with a heritage district, and we're dealing with a heritage district and looking at the committee of adjustment. Does this really fit into a heritage district, or is it something that just doesn't conform with the heritage of that street? So I kind of disagree with my colleague there that we should not be even looking at the heritage aspect of it, because I think that's all part of our decision. The width of it and so forth that they're asking for, that's really a key part. But so I believe is as a committee of adjustment, we should be looking at the whole heritage concept of it, or maybe, you know, we just can't ignore it.
I'd just like to make a point that you know, this is a lot that is roughly 33 feet wide, and there are a number of other lots in that neighborhood that we've been shown that are all of that width, with houses on them. Barry, you have a question.
Yeah, I disagree with Peter's comments. I think he's taking my comments out of context. Certainly all the heritage aspects have to be considered and have been in terms of the lot piece. You have a report that supports it. You have a staff report that supports the size and characteristics of the lot itself. You have a special study, a heritage study that's been done to support it as well. You have a process that allows for the design of the building to be consistent with the heritage aspects of this. And it's not like this is an odd lot and everything else around it is much larger. I think it does fit in the heritage nature of the neighborhood. The lots across the road were subdivided from larger lots into smaller lots at some point in the past. That's been part of the evolution of the lots in this area, where this lot has stayed fairly stable from the past, looking at the history of what's happened with the development of the area. So I think it does fit in with the heritage character of the area, and I do think it does fit in terms of a heritage context.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to now ask for the public. Are there any questions by the public? And since everybody is somewhat turned off, I can't really.
Yes, I would like to make a report, please. Margaret Bain.
Okay.
Sorry, Margaret, just to interrupt you, did you want me
Margaret?
did you want me to put up your letter while you speak, or do you?
I was going to read it.
Oh, sure, absolutely, yes. Margaret has submitted a letter.
Can you put it up as well, Adrienne, while she's
Sure,
speaking?
yeah, no problem.
In which case, if we could see her and have the letter, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Margaret. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm a resident of 219 Albert Street. So my property abuts on the western boundary of the proposed severance. I wish to submit objections to this proposal because of its detrimental effects on the heritage values of this section of Bagot Street, as outlined in the Coburg West Heritage Conservation District Plan. My main objection regards the proposed minor variance of the lot frontage, which would reduce it from the present minimum of 11 meters to 9.88 meters, which is 32.41 feet. There are only 3 well-spaced, well-treed properties on the west side of Bagot Street in this block. To cram in a new building on such a very narrow lot would undoubtedly have a negative effect on the appearance of the whole heritage district. There are some narrow lots on the east side of Bagot Street, but to my knowledge, well, I have confirmed that, none of them are as narrow as this proposed 32.41 feet. Also, these lots on the east side are well-treed with well-placed homes, many over 100 years old, contributing to the overall pleasing heritage streetscape. Most of the remaining trees on the lot in question are on the proposed Severance section. To allow a new building on this Severance section, most of the remaining shade trees would have to go, leaving a very noticeable interruption in tree cover on the west side of this shady tree-lined street. There's also a sewer pipe in this area which would have to be moved, again with likely tree removal. Don't forget that it was this very block on this very street that was chosen last summer for the filming of an episode of the Murdoch Mysteries television series because of its attractively well-treed photogenic heritage appearance. Another objection is that any side yards to a new building on this very narrow lot would necessarily be minimal, unlikely to meet the detailed Conservation District Plan criteria. I also have concerns regarding privacy and loss of sunlight for the owner of 181 Bagot Street. The 1876 heritage home here has 3 south-facing windows on the ground floor, a pair of south-facing French doors on the sunroom, plus 2 more south-facing windows on the second floor. The extreme narrowness of the severed land would necessitate at least 2 stories for any new building. With a new building setback of only 1 to 1.6 meters from this fence line, all or most of the windows at 181 Bagot would be closely overlooked and their sunlight cut off. The requirement for 2 parking spaces on this lot will be difficult to meet without adversely affecting the heritage appearance. Permitted parking on the west side of Bagot Street is already solid most days, so even more cars there would become a problem. Parking space could be achieved by a double gravelled pull-off from the street, but would make a front yard conforming to the Conservation District Plan criteria unlikely. As neighbours, we have no way of knowing what indeed would be built on this very narrow strip. And I'm looking at this picture that we've been shown already, which is, as Cindy herself has told me, every picture is staged, and this is staged. The neat little lovely cottage is a recent photograph of 121 Bagot Street, which is 1875 and has a lot with a full frontage of 75 feet. So really, this is irrelevant. Plus, it's only a picture. We have no plan. Based on all these objections, I feel that the severance of this very narrow sliver of land, only 32.41 feet across, could only result in a new building of a contrived and cramped appearance on a lot with very few shade trees, to the detriment of the present attractive, much valued Coburg West Heritage Conservation District. I would therefore recommend that the minor variance and the severance be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Do we have public who would like to make a presentation?
Hey, Bob.
Please.
Chairman Bob, Dave Cable here.
All right.
Your secretary has 2 documents from me, my wife. One is just basically pictures of the smaller lots in the area. And just for point of clarification, the 3 lots across from this proposed severance are not quite as small as what the severed lot is. It's smaller than anything else on Bagot Street. The one of those double lots is where the old schoolhouse was. It's been duplexed and split into 2 lots. If you see from the pictures, there's room with that schoolhouse being in the center for parking driveways down the north and south side of that schoolhouse without the people having to park in front of it. If you look at the 2 lots directly across from the proposed lot, you will see that their parking partially blocks the house, the way that they're setting up the new lot, the way the way Lindsay's talking about it, which doesn't look overly attractive. This block on Bagot Street has 10 buildings, all of which are brick, all of which are over 100 years old. Given the compressed size of the new lot, I'm not sure what you're going to put on there that is not going to adversely affect the look of the rest of these houses. The other item that's in the second letter. We went through Rob's report, and he talks about at the provincial policy statement, conserving significant built heritage resources. The county official plan wants to see the cultural heritage preserved, wants the greatest positive impact on the quality of life in the county. The official plan wants new development plans to be evaluated based on their ability to generally maintain and structure and character of the surrounding area. The staff report indicates no plan was submitted for building, strictly a severance. The zoning bylaw requires 11 meters for a severance, which this doesn't meet. Under minor, they talk about, the staff report notes that determination of minor in the context of the variance application such as this is not a merit exercise. The requested variants are assessed individually with respect to potential impact on surrounding land uses and evaluated comprehensively with consideration to the overall proposed development. And section 6, Rob's section 6, 5124, the Planning Act provides criteria to be considered when evaluating subdivision of land. This criteria includes the potential of whether the application is premature. And it seems to me that when this application was made, there was no plan submitted for a building. There was nothing to do with what was going to go on that. It's simply an application which is approved, makes that lot saleable. And we won't know until the plan is proposed on that lot what we're going to get as neighbors. So it seems to me that this whole thing is premature and should be denied, and it could be revisited at the point in time somebody actually pays an architect for a plan, shows what the setbacks are, shows us where the garage is going to be, shows us what kind of building it's going to be. This proposed Ontario Cottage idea, I'm the next door neighbor, and the first I heard about this was on the weekend. This proposal's been in the works for quite a while, so I don't understand why it just came up now. If that was the plan, why wasn't it there in the beginning? Anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Is there anyone else who wishes to contribute?
I'd like to say something if I may.
Certainly, Mr. Ballard, yes.
I'm here on behalf of my mother at 181 Bagot Street, the other side of the intended lot from Mr. Cable. We are probably the most impacted by this decision, so therefore I'm speaking on behalf of my mother. First of all, I would like to reiterate everything Margaret Baines and David Cable have said, in particular the issue that if you did have something here, parking street parking would be a challenge. The comment that there are small houses on the street negates the fact that, sorry, I can't remember which of your colleagues mentioned this, but in 7.1a, the new freestanding constructions have got to be compatible with the adjacent heritage properties. And the adjacent heritage properties in this case are that of my mother of 181 Bagot Street and Mr. Cable, and not of the smaller houses on the other side. The breathing space that has been shown in sketches with respect to how much breathing space there is for 181 Bagot Street negates the fact that the majority of the focus of the house at the back, where the main living area is focused towards where this new property is going to be built. The narrow houses on the other side of the street are specifically built and designed so that they aren't, the impact isn't from the side of the house to each other. It doesn't matter as significantly that the houses are so near to one another. In this particular case, the focus for those at 181 Bagot Street will be staring straight at the side of this new property. what Mr. Cable also mentioned was the fact that he'd only just learned of this. Well, likewise, also being next door neighbor, we were, my mother and I were similarly suddenly struck by this. One would have thought that we would have been amongst the first to be consulted, being the most impacted. In addition, to my understanding from the residents of the neighborhood, the intended plan of that particular space has changed, and as all landowners, all people who have their homes have the right to do, but is why I would wonder if this is going to be the long-term plan, specifically as we have no architect's drawings and we have a very much shoehorned image last minute of a home that is in this lot that physically could not actually fit in there. I would be very much against this severance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
I would like to, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Gail, please go ahead.
Okay, I would like to say good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. What I'm now going to do is stop the video and leave the audio on, because I'm going to be reading mine anyway, and there's nothing worse than just looking at the top of my head. So if you'll excuse me, and you can read along with me. I am objecting to the requested severance with a minor variance at the address of 171 Bagot Street for the following reasons. This block of Bagot Street, which is in the West Heritage District, consists entirely of substantial homes. On the east side of the street are a number of very similar houses, all of roughly the same period. They are on fairly narrow lots and have a pleasing symmetry. On the west side of the street, there are currently 3 houses set on generous sized lots. There is a different symmetry to this, and given the width or lack of the requested severance, I do not think it would be possible to design a house that would not look squeezed compared to its neighbours. It would not, in other words, be compatible with existing houses on the west side of this block of Bagot Street with respect to both size and side yards, and it would not be compatible with the substantial houses on the east side. The houses with narrower lots in the neighbourhood seem to fall into 3 categories. There are semi-detached houses, often along, or usually along, I should say, other similar semi-detached houses. They are next to houses of a similar design or size, so there's a symmetry. The houses with a setback look somewhat alien to the street, and I would suspect they would not be approved these days. I do not see any examples of small houses squeezed in between more substantial properties. It is my understanding that any new building on the proposed lot would have to line up with its neighbours on both sides. This, in my opinion, would result in a loss of privacy for both houses. For the house to the north, because of the windows and sitting porch on the south side of the house. For 171 Bagot, for the windows on its north side. This block of Bagot Street has a number of driveways. Street parking would be even more of an issue. Finally, I am puzzled by the staff report making reference to heritage design following approved guidelines. It is my understanding that any infill building in a heritage district has to be of its own time, i.e. it would not be appropriate to copy an existing heritage building. I would add that if this is indeed an issue, why not make the granting of a severance or the minor variance subject to approval of the design of the dwelling to be built, to apply to whomever is the owner of the lot at the time? And this, I understand, is a requirement in several municipalities in the GTA. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you very much.
Lost it. Get back.
Okay.
Oh, no. No.
Hang on for just a second, folks. I can't see anything here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I ask Gail to repeat her, just the very last stipulation she mentioned about tying the house to the severance and so on? The very last comment, Gail?
Yeah, sure. It's my understanding, probably the last sentence.
Yeah.
I would add that if this is indeed an issue, why not make the granting of a severance with a minor variance subject to approval of the design of the dwelling to be built? and this to apply to whomever is the owner of the lot at the time. And this, I understand, is a requirement in several municipalities in the GTA. I believe the City of Toronto and Markham are a couple of them. I'm afraid I haven't done much research or anything else, but I've been given to understand that is a requirement.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I can't see anything right now. I'm not seeing any, well, if you can see me or not.
Yes, we can, Bob.
We can see you, Bob. You're fine.
You can see me. I can't see anybody, so I'm at a significant disadvantage here.
Can you find gallery view?
We have had the public submission.
Yep.
I can't see anything. All I see is a big word Zoom in the middle of the screen.
Whoops.
So, Bob, you just have to go down to the bottom, your taskbar, and click Zoom and open it. Should be a blue square with a white camera in the middle of it.
Okay, I did that, and I've got you now.
Okay, so now go to the top right corner and click Gallery View.
Top right corner, I'm not seeing anything there.
Your speaker view, gallery view.
All I can see is you.
Top right. Alt F2 press. Hold Alt down and press F2.
F2?
Yeah, Alt F2.
Alt F2. There we go. Thank you. I can see everybody now.
So Bob, I think there's just one more public submission for it. It's Paul and Brenda, Chair. And Paul and Brenda.
Brenda, would you like to address the committee?
No, I'm not going to. My comments were covered by the Margaret's report and Blair's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mr. Chair, I do have one email that I received from Catherine Clinton that I don't believe any members have seen.
Okay, could you put that up on the screen?
Yeah. Can you see this? Can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want me to read that, or are you guys okay reading that?
I can read it. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Adrian, I would just read it because there are a few members that might not
Probably worth reading as well.
Sure.
Okay.
It's from a lady named Catherine Clinton. She says, "Hello, I apologize for my comments being late. We have been without power." Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's from Catherine Clinton. She says, "Hello, I apologize for my comments being late. We have been without power since noon, and I was planning to send my comments via my computer. Briefly, I do not oppose the severance, having discussed with the Hendersons their plan to build on the severed lot, but I do have reservations related to the outcomes if they cannot build or decide not to build. Being a neighbor across the street at 182 Bagot, I'm primarily concerned about the consequences of future development for the heritage factors that we are so proud of in this district, and want to ensure that they are preserved in addition to all town requirements applicable to heritage districts. The lot is very narrow, even with the variance, with a small and very odd precedent. A building that is tall and deep would clearly be detrimental to the heritage requirements of the district. It is my hope that strict due diligence will be applied to the town's decisions regarding this property going forward. I will be listening in on the Zoom meeting tomorrow, but do not have plans to participate. Thank you."
Have we lost you, Mr. Chair?
No, I'm back again.
Okay, good.
Oh, dear.
Those
All
are all
right,
the information I received.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion?
Peter had his
Mr.
hand up.
Delante.
If
Yes,
there's no
go
further
ahead, Peter.
discussion, there's no further discussion, Chair, I would call for the vote.
Okay.
At this point, we don't have a motion on the floor, either the action recommended in the report, which is a conditional, specific, or not, although I see Mr. Gutteridge has his hand up.
Members of the committee, I would like advice from Rob at this point in terms of Gail Remit's suggestion on putting a stipulation making the approval subject to approval of the house to be built through the heritage permit approval process, so that this, if it cannot be approved through the heritage permit approval process, the severance and of course the variance becomes moot if the severance doesn't happen anyway. That would be a way to deal with some of the issues that have been raised by the public and others, rather than getting into a yes or no vote on this among committee members. So that's just that's a first suggestion in terms of an amendment to the recommendations. I just wanted the planner's comments on that.
Oh, sorry, my screen moved here. If I can respond to that, Mr. Chair, on page 2 of the agenda, back way at the start, was the action recommended, which was that the variance be generally relate to the plan submitted in Schedule B. So in terms of, again, the variance relates to that 9.88 as shown. But then specifically as well for the severance was that prior to the stamping of a deed, a severance agreement be registered on title for the new lot to address all future development requirements, such as but not limited to servicing, grading, driveway. Thanks, Brent, or whoever did that. I'm assuming it was Brent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Servicing, grading, driveway and access. That's come up a number of times about the driveway. Heritage conservation, including heritage design following approved guidelines. As Ms. Raymond made note, it isn't that you're supposed to copy a heritage house onto an infill lot. I've always used that term heritage-esque. So it has to be compatible with that heritage district. And that's what I refer to specifically as following approved heritage guidelines. It must be of its own time. Usually that's in materials and such, although the look, as I had made mention during my analysis, comments about, say, New Amherst, where, again, there's many Ontario cottages there, but they do not look like a 1920s home on Bagot or Albert or Church Street, for examples. Urban design and landscaping, including screening, all of the satisfaction of the town. Again, the 5% parkland, those conditions be subject to approval by the town. On top of that, beyond just these action recommended, would be any new permit for a house would be required beyond the severance agreement to go through a heritage permit through the Heritage Committee, whether that be 6 months or 10 years from now. Whatever the guidelines were at that time, that would definitely be a requirement because this property does lie within the Heritage District. So even beyond the conditions that I've outlined as my recommendations to the committee for a severance agreement be put in place. And I hope I've tried to cover many of those components that a number of these neighbors have addressed. They are valid in terms of their concerns. I know Ms. Reed has tried to present some information to try to help alleviate those concerns with what an infill house or lot might look like. We're trying to tie that down a bit clear with the severance agreement because we don't want, now in this case, the Hendersons are proposing to keep the lot themselves and not sell it in terms of the infill lot. We're always concerned that those plans do change and that someone new would come to the table and have no idea of this good discussion that went on today as part of this. And so we want to flag those kinds of concerns and conditions to any future owner about those things, such as servicing as made mention of the Public Works Department, the Heritage Committee comments, all of those kind of components, which are typically tied into that severance agreement, which flags it, and then it rides on title for that new infill lot so that as a number of these neighbors have made mention, in case it's not the Hendersons that build, that those things are addressed and are because someone might build something different than the proposed Ontario cottage, at least the comments of that it needs to fit into those guidelines are specifically flagged. And that's why I feel that with those conditions, that this is an acceptable proposal.
Rob, if I may, just so I'm clear, the lead into that about prior to the stamping of a deed, a severance agreement, this would mean that unless those conditions had been dealt with, the deed, the actual severance would not be formal and final? Is that basically what that is saying?
That's correct, Mr. Chair, that the agreement needs to be in place.
Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Sorry, Barry. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Vice Chair, that severance agreement. Now, whether those actual details of what the house design is going to be, that they get the heritage permit within the next year, that isn't specifically the target. It's that everyone's aware that they're going to need those things, that there be a conceptual design and that be on title, so that
that's not the issue. No, it's, I think what's happening is that Tom's here.
Sorry, thank you. That all of those things be tied in, so that it's clear that that an infill lot will have those requirements, not that they specifically have that heritage permit within the year and then the severance fails, because that's the problem with the condition, is they only have 12 months to meet this condition. So that's, in this case, would be the severance agreement, which is what we've done with other infill lots where there's been questions about whether it be tree protection. In this case, it's heritage compatibility, which is the key, but not the only consideration that needs to be understood.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I have lost the gallery view again.
I have lost all the views. I can't see anyone.
Alan wants to speak.
Okay, let's see if we can get back to the gallery view here.
Yeah, very bottom of the taskbar, Alan. There's a blue square with a white video camera. Press that and it should come up for you.
I can see Brent, but I can't see anyone else.
Okay, so Alt F2.
I just... Now I can see Alan, but I can't see anyone else. And I've pressed Alt F2 a number of times.
Well, I can't see a soul. I have no video on this at all.
So Alan, are you using a desktop? Just go to very bottom.
Alan.
Very bottom, there should be a camera. It's like a blue square with a white video camera. Can you tell me what you're seeing, Alan? Alan, what are you seeing?
Nothing. All I'm seeing is the original email from Adrian, which I used to access the Zoom meeting.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
I'm afraid to go back into that because I may just lose my connection altogether.
No, you can do that. You can go back into it.
Should I go back?
Yep. It'll bring you right back to the screen. It should.
All right, well, I'm going to go back to the start and sign in again.
Maybe Adrian just move. Maybe we'll just do a chair called just a 5-minute recess. We'll get this sorted out for you.
Bob, did you hear that? You just want to call a recess?
5 minutes, maybe.
Take a 5-minute recess.
There we go.
Chair, are you up?
I'm up.
Okay, so now let's just try to get Alan.
I'm still trying to open up that email.
Alan, do you see yourself on the Zoom?
Say that again?
Do you see yourself?
No, I can't. I can hear everybody, but I have no video.
Just try to enter through that email there, Alan.
Can you still hear me?
We can hear you fine, Alan. I can
Well,
see you as well.
I'm back to launching the Zoom meeting, so
We can all see you, Alan, and we can hear you.
yeah.
Alan, are you okay if we continue, if you can hear us and we can hear you?
Oh, I see you guys now.
Okay, great.
Okay, good.
It's important you see us as well.
Yes.
Hey, Alan.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion that we can vote for or against.
This is difficult to put into words, but the direction that Barry was suggesting has merit for me, because I think that if this was all based on having a complete package to deal with, in other words, a conceptual drawing to see what the house is going to look like, how it's going to sit on the property. Right now, we're 50% guessing. We're trying to determine whether the severance should happen and then let everything else come together after the fact. Quite honestly, given the complexity of this particular issue, I'd like to make a motion to defer 1 month, have this matter come back at our next meeting, and it can be revisited by staff. There can be further input from the applicant, as well as committee chair and members, to proceed perhaps in a different way so that we have a better sense of what we're looking at in an overall picture. Right now, we only have a tiny sliver of what could be, and a lot of people don't like what they're seeing, but we don't know what we're really looking at. And that's where I am struggling. And that's really why I feel that we're really at a disadvantage. If we can't see what the picture is going to look like, I find it difficult to make that decision. So I'll make a motion to defer, and hopefully in a month we can come back with a clearer picture and the ability to make a better decision. So if there's a seconder to that, that would be great.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to second the motion. I'm not sure we want to make it specific to a month. Perhaps more time is required. And I think it would help if I'm certainly convinced that there's a sincere attempt on the part of the owners to do something that will be satisfactory, to give them a chance to do a bit more neighborhood consultation as well, I think would help on this. So I support you, Alan, I support your notion of a deferral at the present time, and to come back with some more specifics in terms of concept. I don't think we're looking for final design, but more specifics on concept that we can tie into this approval. Is that consistent with what you're suggesting?
Yes, it is. Thank you for your support.
So we have that motion and seconded. Does anyone else wish to place a motion?
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I'd like to get a verbal vote, and I'll start with you, Barry.
Yes.
All right. Any
I seconded it.
Any further discussion?
So just to clarify, the
You have
motion is,
seconded it?
Sorry, let her speak.
Just to clarify, the motion is to defer without a time frame.
Yeah, I would prefer not to have a time frame rather than to say come back in a month like rush in. If it takes 2
Okay.
months or 3 months or something to come back with, to go through the process and the rest of it, so be it. We'd be happy to deal with it in a month if they're ready. So as soon as they're ready is what I would intend. But I wouldn't put a month, that you have to rush back in a month necessarily. So I would say that
Chair, I would change the motion to defer sign die until such time as the applicant is ready to come back with a more, a different proposal so that we can get a better sense of what.
A more comprehensive proposal. Okay. I second that, still second that.
Okay. Astrid, would you like to vote on that, please?
Yes, I'm in favor of deferring.
Mr. Delanty?
Peter?
I'm prepared to support that. I guess I think the key thing is, I'd like to see what they're planning to put there, but also a number of points that come up tonight about lack of consultation with all the neighbors. I think that's essential. It's their street, it's the Heritage District, and if that's included in it, I would support that motion.
All right, then the motion is carried.
If I could, Chair, I appreciate Alan bringing that motion forward, because my mindset was I was going to vote against this as it stood tonight. I'll tell you, that might make it clear where I was at. And I'm glad the deferral is there and there's an opportunity to revisit it.
Okay, this file is deferred until we have more information from the applicants. All right. Thank you very much.
The neighbors have been contacted.
Sorry? Somebody was commenting? Yes.
Not only that, do we have more information on this, but also that in that deferral, that this will provide an opportunity for the applicants to touch base with all the neighbors who are very concerned. So I think those are the two things we want to look for.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the next site. Next item is file number A-03-20, application for minor variance from 467 Sandra, Cres. Is there a representative of this application? Not hearing anyone. All right. Rob would give us the information on this application.
Certainly. Just also to then let folks know if anyone else who was in the waiting room or had their cameras turned off as part of that application who had spoken for those neighbors, they're certainly welcome to stay to listen to the rest of the committee meetings should they so choose. But it's also dinner time if they want to go and have their dinner. There'll be no more discussion on the application on Bagot Street. There's now two additional applications, one for a variance on Sandra and one for a severance on King Street East. Just for clarity purposes. Sorry to jump in there, Mr. Chair. I just thought that would be helpful for,
yes.
I know that there was a number of members of the public who were part of that discussion and wanted to hear what was going on or being conceptualized for Bagot Street. I just didn't want them to think that we might do something different or something like that, and if they didn't stay.
Okay.
So in this case, Mr. Chair, the application is for variance at 467 Sandra Crescent. Sandra Crescent is one of the small cul-de-sac crescents off of Sinclair. In this case, they back onto the grounds of Burnham Public School, as shown on an updated. Thank you very much, Mr. Gutteridge, for catching me on my mistake. That the original report showed Marion Street and that Sandra Crescent is the one below that. Unfortunately, they're both addressed 467, and I had highlighted the incorrect lot on Marion. I will definitely take the hit on that. And that Mr. McLaughlin didn't catch me on it either. So as part of our editing process and commenting back and forth that we do within the department. So we both didn't catch that. I must have looked at that map 6 times. So I feel terrible, committee. I apologize. The house is at 467 Sandra Crescent, not Marion Crescent, which backs, as I said, backs onto the grounds of Burnham Public School. As you can see, it's an odd-shaped frontage due to the angle of the cul-de-sac on the south side there. It's also a wider lot than many other lots that are in that neighborhood. In this case, the concept design is shown on Schedule B, page 59 in the agenda package, if you're following along, which shows the existing house at 467 and then the proposed attached rear garage. Now, in this case, Mr. Chair, should this garage have been detached because it meets lot coverage, it would have been approved for a building permit immediately. The applicants, because he's proposing for part of the garage to be a workshop, had wanted to attach it with a 3-season mudroom to come in off the back kitchen where he has his patio door and stairs to come down and into that mudroom and then carry on into the garage and workshop. Underneath the zoning bylaw, does not differentiate between an attached an attached garage in the rear yard. It considers it part of the main building. Oh, sorry. I'll minimize this. Sorry, thanks, Adrian. So in this case, should that garage have been detached, it could have been a meter from the side property line, which in this case is the east side, the left side of the page. Of course, being on the south side of the road, this property is upside down. If you always consider north the top of the page, in this case, north is the bottom of the page. So the east side could be a meter. The south side or the top of the page could also be a meter. In this case, the applicants are proposing an 11-foot setback. Oh, of course, I gotta convert that to meters. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm going to go with 11 feet for now. It's in my report what the metric conversion is. I apologize for not having that. I just had my report up, and now with there we go. Oh darn. Typically, it's a 7-meter or 23-foot rear yard as a required rear yard area for adequate amenity space. In this case, again, being the extra wide lot, there's room for amenity space between the garage and the west property line. And actually, the garage concept design is shown there on that previous sketch. It includes the opportunity for a little covered area beside the garage that would be basically a covered patio beside the workshop garage, which is why it looks a little larger. Again, being a larger than average, this is a 75-foot lot rather than the 60s that are beside it. There's extra room for amenity space in back behind. Looking specifically at the landscape urban design guidelines, it actually specifically does talk about attached rear garages when there's not extra living space above, but within just the garage itself, and actually recommends just this kind of application. Unfortunately, that's not in our current zoning bylaw. So we have official plan policy recommending something that the zoning bylaw hasn't caught up with yet. In this case, of course, that's why we're at a variance and why staff are recommending approval of this variance following the concept sketches as presented. Obviously, there's no traffic impacts for this kind of thing. The driveway will be wide enough, plus there's garage spaces for sufficient parking. It's at the end of a dead-end cul-de-sac, so there's no traffic or through that has to be worried about. given actually the policies of the urban design guidelines that are in support of just this kind of application, it gave even more weight to the concept when I first met with the homeowners back when there was still snow on the ground, before COVID slowed everything down. And I took some of my original pictures. I didn't include them as part of my report. I didn't think seeing this property covered in snow would help my discussion looking at the adjacent neighbor to the east. To ensure that adequate privacy and screening were in place. Again, had this been a detached structure, 1 meter would have been sufficient. The proposal is looking for more than that, both to the side and to the rear. The property is regulated by the Conservation Authority, so that natural hazard would need to be dealt with through a permit. Typically, when there's not extra living space impacted through the natural hazard policies, they just look then for safety for that new space, which would typically require electrical and such to be above the floodplain elevation, so that, God forbid, we get a major flood in that neighborhood again, if Coburg Creek flooded, that it wouldn't impact then this new structure. Given the actual strong support of the urban design guidelines for just this kind of application, Mr. Chair, staff are comfortable recommending approval for this variance, and that the variance relates specifically to the concept plan as shown as Schedule B, because that really demonstrates that intent of the 5 foot to the side and the 11 foot to the rear, although the actual building permit in the end might be slightly off. Of course, I would not want to see, having done this review, things moved around too much more than what's shown. I presented an app as well as part of Schedule C, which is on page 60 of the overall agenda. Within the overall crescents, Marion, Sandra, and Harnden, as well as Sinclair Street itself, the whole neighborhood is generally 1950s, 1960s homes construction, usually smaller homes. Many of them, and when you look at this air photo, it becomes very clear, many of them have rear garages, detached in most cases, but in some cases, some very large garages, considerably larger than what's being proposed. Again, depending on the size of the lot, a detached garage can be as large as 8% of the overall lot, with the total lot coverage being up to 40%. Those garages all work. I feel, in my personal opinion, that the attachment of this garage to this home through a mudroom does not trigger any undue concerns. And given the policies of the urban and landscape design guidelines supporting attached rear garages with reduced rear yard setbacks, as long as there's a minimum amenity space area that is being met with this application, I'm comfortable recommending approval of it, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are you there, Bob? Bob?
Looks like Bob's muted.
Well, he's not just muted, he's disappeared from video at the moment.
Oh,
there
Oh,
he is, right
I
there.
see him. Yep.
Okay, I had my hand up. Just
now I can. Yeah, I was.
There he is. Okay. Rob, just a question, comment. I always look at these from the impact on neighbors, and to me, this is actually superior from a neighbor standpoint, because you end up with a structure that's further away from the neighbor to the rear and further away to the neighbor from the neighbor to the east. And you end up with a situation that benefits the homeowner, the owner of the property as well. But it also, again, in terms of its impact on those around it, is actually superior than to what would be standard under the bylaw. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
That was exactly the way we felt.
Okay. Is there, Mr. Chair, is there any more discussion on this, or can we, I think we can probably just move to motion if you wish. Questions?
Hang on, Barry. Alan, you have a question.
I do, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, given that this garage addition is going to have an attachment to the house. You folks have dealt with these in the past. I'm just curious, do you ever give any consideration to the fact that there should be some registration on title that the possibility of using it for living quarters not be allowed? Because you have an attachment to the house, you have direct access to that area. Next thing you know, you've got somebody turning it into a bedroom or a rec room or putting a bathroom in or whatever the case is. Is that a past practice that you would have utilized, Rob, or is that not something that was ever given considerations in the past?
Mr. Chair, through you to the committee member, given our second unit's bylaw policy, whether it be in the house or then in this new garage workshop, I guess a future owner may look to try to convert it. They would then need to have the minimum 3 parking spaces as part of that, and would need to go through a future analysis. And exactly, I hadn't thought about that to see where planning department might stand on if this new garage were converted in the future to living space, and that would also trigger concerns from the Conservation Authority. So I think there's a couple of things that might stop that future, but specifically as it ties to this variance now, we didn't see that as a specific concern not to allow this garage to be living space.
Rob, just a clarification. If this were an addition to the house, forget about it being a garage. If they had come forward with this as a proposal at the moment, my understanding is they would be able to do this as of right.
Mr. Chair, they would need to meet the 23-foot setback instead of the 11 as shown. It would
Okay,
still
so
trigger.
it's the rear setback.
Correct. Would be that rear setback. And again, because as a right today, they could apply for a detached garage up to a meter,
right,
close to those rear property lines. Actually, with 11 feet and 5, it's as you've mentioned, it's a superior. Keeping it attached closer towards the front gives some nice amenity space, protects some of the trees in the backyard. There is one I think it's going to be in the way, have to come out, but as an individual private homeowner, they can do that. Importantly, it protects a significant line of trees on that west side, which really provides that buffering between the noisier schoolyard and the private property. Protects along the south line, but there's one tree in the middle that would come out. And they were looking at it anyway, thinking that, if we want to put up a deck or a patio, that it was going to be in the way anyhow.
Chair?
I think Peter has his hand up. Did you have your hand up, Peter?
Yes. Thanks, Barry. Chair, are you on?
Looks like Bob's frozen.
Hey, is there any other questions?
He's either frozen or very, very still.
Peter, I saw that, Barry. Thank you.
Actually, I thought this was fairly straightforward, but Alan has brought up a good point. And for safeguard, I remember thinking back on Park Street, we allowed, it was a garage, and we allowed them to build apartments on top of it on Park Street. I think it's Park Street. And that was fine, went through and everything, but what sort of, do we have, Rob, please, that they could take this garage and make it into an extra bedroom? Are you just saying that they'd have to go through a series of
there's other hoops
requests again?
Exactly. There would be other hoops that they would need to jump through with the Conservation Authority and the Building Department. Certainly the look of the space, if it was to be its own unit, it triggers additional parking requirements and such that would need to be met before that could be considered, or potentially have to come back for a separate variance for that in the future, should either this owner or a future owner look to doing that. But based on the concept before us, looking at the building plans that were presented by the applicant, that is strictly a garage workshop space. There's certainly no living space at this point. Does not show a bathroom.
Yeah. I know that on Abbott Boulevard, for instance, a number of the garages there have been converted into additional bedrooms or whatever, TV rooms, what have you. So, but anyways, you seem to feel that you have that covered. We have that covered as a town. Okay.
Okay, is there anyone in the public who wants to make comment or address this? I'm not hearing anything, so we can.
Here.
Is there any
Can I put the motion-
submissions from neighbors and?
Motion forward if you want.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Peter.
Peter,
I'm trying to figure if there's anybody who has, here we go. Is there any submissions on this one?
No.
No, nothing received.
Received, thank you. Mr. Anybody hearing anything?
Chair, I would move that the recommendations be approved.
Happy to second that motion.
Okay,
Chair?
all right, any further discussion?
Thank you, Barry.
Astrid, how did you vote?
In favor?
Okay,
And
Alan?
Yes, in favor.
Okay, that motion is carried.
I voted for it too, by the way. Okay.
Got it recorded, Peter. Don't worry.
I
Okay.
Because you,
Sorry, Bob. I think we're having a little bit
Made the
of time hearing you here.
motion and that indeed be maybe a best. Well,
You're really breaking up, Bob. It's hard to hear what you're saying.
sounds like you're in an echo chamber.
all right. I'll try that again. Is that any better?
That's better. Thanks.
Okay. I don't know why, but nonetheless. Okay, we have a third application. Long day. File B04-20. Application for consent 428 to 42 King Street East. And do we have any representatives of that
Application?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair.
application?
Yeah. So this is Nitin Malhotra. I'm the architect for this project.
As well. All the other people, which one are you?
There we go.
I see two names here, Aaron Gold and Sean O'Grady.
Yep. So
Okay.
yeah, Aaron and myself. We are the ones who are the representatives for this particular application.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Rob, it's over to you to explain the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this case, the application is to do a lot addition and easement from 428 King Street East to 432 King Street East. This is the northeast corner property of King Street East and Brook Road North. Had been the location of a former motel. It's across the road from Scotty's Motel, if you know that site, south of the East Village subdivision that's still under construction further to the north. In my staff report, I presented a general sketch as Schedule A on page 68. We're getting towards the end of the overall agenda. It's page 68 of 70 in the agenda, which shows the two properties. Currently, 432 is a long linear property with a really strange little 11-foot or 12-foot flag over to Brook Road. In this case, what's proposed, as shown on Schedule B, page 69 of 70, as shown in red, is the lot addition from 428 to 432. What this allows then is I'll just minimize this. If you could just go on to the project page to the south of that. So that gives the context. We can see Scotty's Motel. You can see it's just east of Brookside Youth Center. And so this page here is the actual survey of the two parcels. Currently, it's two commercial. They're both zoned district commercial parcels. What's happening is then that north half, if you will, of 428 is being added over to 432 to allow 428 to be its own entity. In this case, it's proposed for a gas bar and convenience store, which is shown on the concept site plan, which is also currently under review by the planning department right now on page 70, which has the overall outline of the overall project. You can see in the dark line there, which would be the retained lot of 428, right on the very corner. You can see the canopy of a gas bar, if you will, and then the gas station and convenience store right along King Street, right at the corner of King and Brook. The land would then be added to the existing lot at 432, which would allow then for a drive-through restaurant on that new lot, the lot addition, and then a future commercial development on King Street East. The easement would be for that central driveway from 432, granting rights of access to 428 to allow trucks, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles to carry through. Each lot would be serviced independently, so there's no pipes crossing that line. In terms of how that's overall accessed. As you can see, there's a central pedestrian spine. Again, those are more site plan development concepts as we're working through with Mr. Gold and his development team, including engineers, architects who are also as part of the call with Nitin and his team at N Architecture for the concept designs for these new buildings. Actually, there's a meeting of staff about this project tomorrow. But if you could move just up to page 69 there. Sorry, thanks very much. So you can see where the lot to be retained is that southwest corner. In red is the lot addition, and then there'd be an easement through those middle parts for that driveway access. With this property being zoned commercial, the retained lot meets those minimum lot standards, both in terms of area and frontage for future development. In this case, we actually know what that development is going to be. As you can see, the parking and road alignment works. A joint driveway does make sense because both of these are major roads, arterial roads. Traffic volume and the number of driveways, according to Public Works, is trying to be limited. So again, we're starting with two driveways. We want to remain with two driveways, not have 4 or 6 driveways all over the place with this site. That would just generate potential for accidents and such. So having an easement with a joint driveway makes sense. This overall plaza would operate jointly with things like snow clearing, those pedestrian spines and such, servicing multiple properties, and allow people to flow through, both vehicular or pedestrians, in a safe manner. Since we're starting with 2 properties, ending with 2 properties, the retained lot does meet those minimum standards. Staff are in support of the lot addition severance. The easement is to, as I made mention, for access purposes. With that, I would be glad to turn it over to the applicant should they have anything additionally to add for your discussion and decision-making in this process. And upon their conclusion, then either the applicant, his team, or myself would be happy to answer any questions, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you, Rob. So, Mr. Chair, obviously through you, as Rob rightly pointed out, these are two lots, and once the severance and the addition is done, they're still going to remain as two lots, and the lot, the size and the frontages meet the minimum criteria as described in the city's bylaws and other regulations. The site plan, as Rob was saying, is currently being reviewed by the city as well, and we have already gone for the first application, and we really do not see any hurdles in proceeding forth with our development plans. Primarily, this exercise is to just clean up, the lot definitions and the different parts on which these two properties are sitting, and also to provide an easement in the middle in the favor of Lot A so that we can have easy access to both the lots. And that's it. That's it for me.
All right. Is there, are there any questions from the committee members?
Mr. Chair, I'm waving my hand. I'm having trouble rationalizing the survey stuff here. It may just be my confusion. The existing lot
Very,
shape, the existing lot. Yeah. Yes. Bob, you said something. Anyway, the existing lot shape looks like there's a dog leg that goes up in behind the houses that are there. And then in the Schedule B draft survey, I'm not quite sure, that stays part of 432 as well? Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Gutteridge. Yes, so if you look to the top, where my red box is, right, you can see most of it is part 10. Above that is part 11. That is that dog leg and would still remain part of 432. So what happens is 432 becomes a much wider dog leg, if you will, and 428 just becomes that little small corner where the gas station is proposed.
Thank you. And there's nothing on the concept plan that relates to that parcel up in the top corner then?
So if we can scope down, so what happens at that point then is parts 10 and 11 will then form where the northerly restaurant is proposed, as well as a buffering greenscape on the south side of the stormwater management pond.
Which is north of that proposed restaurant, have I got that? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. You can just see there's a little bit of a lightly hatched area across the top of that yellow restaurant.
And from there up would be related to the stormwater, right? Is that right?
That's correct. There's the stormwater management pond to the north.
Would have been good to show that, because again, I had trouble matching the shapes and sizes to
sorry,
the resulting piece, and it looks like there's a leftover piece. And okay, thank you. That's clear.
And then again, those easement parts that are shown as, I believe it's 5, 6, and 7, although I might have my numbers incorrect. That's that driveway between that restaurant on Brook Road and the gas station. They're very light gray on this particular concept site plan.
Yeah.
But that retained parcel is marked with a heavy dash.
Yes. Gotcha. So 432 is still benefiting in terms of density from the dogleg to the north, in terms of its total site area. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And as you can see, it's also in this concept design is providing the lion's share of the parking for the overall commercial development.
Yes. Do we have any other questions? Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alan?
In the concept plan that was shown on the screen just a moment ago, you're showing on the easterly portion, which is 432, a standalone building, a strip. Is that going to be separate and apart from the gas bar and the convenience store? Are they related? Is it all tied in together, or what's the concept there?
My understanding is this allows for the leasing of 428 or potentially selling 428 as a standalone parcel for the gas station with then that joint easement for parking, driveway, access purposes and such through that overall site plan. 432 would be then the two commercial buildings, the northerly restaurant, and then the easterly commercial block, with then just the gas bar being its own independent parcel at 428. Whether that be sold or leased as part of an overall commercial plaza, then is back into Mr. Gold's court in terms of what their business development plan is.
Okay, you had made a remark earlier in your presentation, Rob, regarding the fact that King Street and Brook are two major arterial roads in the community.
That's
so
correct.
You have access off of King Street, you have access off of Brook Road. Are those accesses, is the intent, the future intent, to control how you come in and how you exit? So are you going to be able to go east on King and make a left-hand turn and go into the plaza? Or will your access from King Street only be westbound? Like, that's only presumption right now, but.
Yeah, I don't have those more detailed plans in terms of the overall transportation. I thought both of these driveways were full movement, so not restricted to right in, right out. I think that's kind of where your question's going now.
Okay. I know it's not the issue that we're dealing with, so let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
As part of site plan development, Public Works was very concerned about making sure that things like that were done safely. So there was distances being set back from the intersection and such. Both Northumberland County, because they control Brook Road, along with the Town of Coburg Public Works Department, because we control King Street. We're having those discussions and working with the applicant and his design team to ensure that those safety considerations were definitely part of that overall. But given that they both are currently independent parcels, we felt that this was a really good opportunity for a severance for that lot addition to allow a commercial plaza to happen, and then the developer then have the opportunity, depending what they chose to do with that gas bar, whether it be to keep it and lease it, that land to a tenant, or whether they chose to sell it with then that cross easement back and forth for things like snow clearing and pedestrians and parking and such. And that was where those slivers of driveway were then important as part of an easement, again, depending what the developer chose to do. And this opens up opportunities for them either to keep it as one or to do something else with it. If not to speak on your behalf, Aaron, in case there's something else you wanted to jump in there and provide clarity for the members.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Sorry, Bob, I think you're cutting out again.
I think he said, are there any other questions?
and no submissions either.
Are there any other questions?
I did still see another member of the.
I can't see Peter on my screen for some reason. I can't see.
There he is.
A motion. No.
I did see another member of the public. I didn't know if they were here for this application or had any other questions. Mr. O'Grady?
Can see Astrid now. That's good.
Hi. Yes. No, I was more concerned about the future green space at the north end based on the drainage pond and that sort of thing, where it was going to end up. And now I have a better understanding of the severance plan. So far so good. Just won't know till the next phase.
Well, and certainly, I'm sorry to Mr. Chair to jump in here, just to let Mr. Grady know if he wanted to see more information about those concept designs or to chat more about the pond or that north green space. There's a really great landscape plan that Mr. Gold and his team have presented as part of that site plan review. I'd be happy to share or talk about with you in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
All right, do we have a motion?
Alan?
I'll make the motion to approve the application as presented.
I'm happy to second.
Second by Barry. Okay, Ingrid, are you in favor?
Astrid, yes, I am.
Astrid, yes.
Ingrid is too.
I apologize. I never got to that, I don't know. It's been a long meeting, okay?
Yep.
Peter?
You got to start distorting our names. It's only fair.
I vote in favor.
Good.
Peter, are you in favor?
Yes, I am. I vote in favor.
It's unanimous.
And there's just a chat come through, Mr. Chair, from Councillor Beatty, who unfortunately has to take a phone call at 6:15 and has had to leave the meeting.
You just froze.
Yeah, it's a iffy internet connection, I think.
You're okay now. You just froze. I don't know what's happening.
Has everyone had a chance to vote, Chair?
Is there any other discussion? Yes,
Carried.
It's carried. Okay.
Yes, it's approved.
it was carried.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
is there any other business? Alan?
No, I was
Al?
just going to say goodbye to everybody.
Well, I guess we need to move that we adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second it.
Pick a couple of names and we are adjourned. Okay, thank you very much, folks. It's been a slice.
Okay, thanks. It's been a slice.
Okay, and I can hardly wait for the town hall to be opened. Note that, Mr. Larmer, please. Whenever
Yeah,
the
this is
town,
too much
we are in
fun.
phase 3.
Thanks,
we are in
Ed. Thanks
phase,
for all your work.
other businesses are open.